How much money does Dress to Impress actually make, and is the game a money grab? You guys, I have seen a ton of comments recently of people talking about the new Dress to Impress updates and saying that the game is quote unquote overpriced or that developers are asking for too much money for the bare minimum. And so I wanted to make a video where I actually broke down how much money, in theory, the developers make per game passes, and I think you guys would be shocked and not in a good way. It's actually very disappointing. Now, before we get started, I do want to clarify I did all this math myself. However, the amounts of Robux and how they convert is kind of subject to change just because it does vary based on where you live, and there's a lot of factors that go into how much money you actually earn from stuff, including taxes, people you have to pay, stuff like that. So these are all just generalizations. I'm just using general numbers, so please keep that in mind. But I will show all of my math on the screen, and I think you guys will be very surprised to find out how much they actually make in Dress to Impress in theory, okay? Keep in mind, I don't work with them, I don't have their actual numbers, but going off of publicly available records and just kind of the pricing of things, we can kind of make inferences on how much they're actually earning based on certain sales. Now, to get straight to the point, we're basically going to start by looking at their game passes because this is the main way that Dress to Impress probably generates revenue. Now, if you guys have seen the game passes, a lot of people complain about the VIP pass being 800 Robux, but in the grand scheme of things, it's actually one of the cheapest VIP game passes on the entire platform. Now, I went ahead and did some math where basically I used the formula that 800 Robux costs about $9.99 USD. So if you did the math and you divide that, it goes to about 1 Robux is equal to 0.01249 USD. So that's how we're going to be calculating things going forward. So, using that formula, you can kind of infer that the VIP Game Pass costs users about $10, $9.99, custom makeup is $4.36, run faster is $1.86, the increased item limit is $1.61, the French luxury set is $3.49, the futuristic suit is 74 cents, the haunting beauty is $3.24, the moon gazer set is $3.74, the 2 times money is $4.99, the luxury dress is $3.11, the Queen of Hearts set is $4.99, the Rich Girl set is $3.74, and the Dream set is the same price. So altogether, these are the average prices per Game Pass, and when you actually look at this in comparison to USD, I feel like these prices are actually very reasonable, with the only one that is drastically different being the VIP Game Pass. But the VIP Game Pass is unlike any other Game Pass in the sense that it constantly adds new features, i.e. new outfits coming out all the time, and so I feel like the pricing for this Game Pass is actually very conservative and not that out of, the realm of what typically games would, price for things. And in reality, I think it's actually quite below expectations for how much games typically charge for VIP, just because, again, they are constantly making new assets for this Game Pass. Now, if we were to combine the total cost of all of these, the cost in USD is about $48.60, and the Robux cost for all of them is 4,187 Robux. Now, when we actually break down these sales on Roblox, I think a lot of people have the understanding or misconception that the games actually keep all of their profits, which you guys will quickly find out this $48 does not stay at $48 and drops incredibly drastically when it comes to actually how much the game takes home. Now, for the sale breakdown, the general sale breakdown on Roblox, the actual cost for all the game passes is 4,187 Robux, like I just mentioned. However, with any sale for game passes on Roblox, Roblox keeps 30% of the sale. So, in that theory, from the sale, Roblox takes 1,256 Robux, and the developer, so Dress to Impress, keeps 2,931 Robux. Meaning, although they sold all these game passes for 4,187 Robux, they actually only take home 2,931 Robux. Now it gets better. With the current DevX rates, which I do have to clarify, this obviously does vary by where you live. DevX rates are very different based on, obviously, the country that you live in and stuff like that. There's a lot of factors that can impact these, and I do believe they're recently updated, so these are the most up-to-date numbers I could probably find, which I may be wrong. But for 1,000 Robux, you earn $3.50 USD. So basically, what this means is that when you take money, i.e. Robux, that you've earned in Roblox, and you want to turn it back into real-life money, you have a different exchange rate, which if you looked at before, the 800 Robux was actually worth quite a bit more USD, and that just kind of has to do with the way that they value things within the game. Because if you scroll all the way back up, because obviously they do have to make money, to actually purchase 800 Robux, which we use for our formula, that's $10 USD. But when you're turning that Robux back into real-life money, 1,000 Robux is $3.50 USD, so it's like less than half for more Robux is how much you're earning, which is terrible for developers, but that's just the way Roblox works. And so if we were to use this calculation, and we do the amount that Dressed Impress actually kept from the sale, which is 2,931 Robux, we divide that by 1,000 and then times that by the DevX rate, which is 3.5, you would get $10.26 USD. So keep in mind, a player paid over $48 to get all the game passes, but after DevX rates, Dressed Impress only keeps $10.26. But there's more, okay? Don't even get me started, there's more. But also keep in mind that with that purchase rate, they've already lost $38.34 in value, which is an astronomical amount, right? Now, when we come into the additional fee section, this is where it's kind of varies, and it obviously varies by the state or country that you're in, because every country has its own taxing system, and obviously it would depend on how Dressed Impress is set up. If they're set up as a corporation, they would have to pay corporate taxes. If they're set up as an individual proprietorship, there's other things for that as well. So I was just using the generic federal income tax, which keep in mind, not every state has this tax, so it would obviously depend on where they're situated, where people are being taxed and stuff, so this is why I'm using vague numbers here. But if they've earned $10.26, and the US tax, the average tax, federal tax percentage is about 22% across the entire country, that would mean the US government will tax them 22% on $10.26, which means that the US government takes $2.25 from that for taxes, which means after tax, they keep $8. Which, keep in mind, this does not count some really important fees such as bank transfer fees. To get DevX, you typically have to pay a bank transfer fee to get the money actually from Roblox and out of their portal into your bank account, and so a lot of banks will charge transfer fees, especially if you're doing an international transfer. So if you're a developer who doesn't live in the United States and you are getting money from the Roblox Developer Exchange Program, you have to pay additional money to even get that money, because there is transfer fees for international institutions and also conversion rates. So sometimes there will also be fees to convert the USD into whatever currency you use. So if you're a developer in the UK or Canada, you may actually have to pay more to get a conversion into that, currency. And also on top of that, if your currency is worth more than USD or something like that, you actually end up earning less because of the conversion rate, so it's kind of messy. But on top of the bank transfer fees, you're also paying developers, which, keep in mind, it can cost hundreds of dollars per set to be making sets in Dressed Impress. It's very expensive to pay developers. You also have to pay other taxes, such as corporate taxes, and obviously they will have write-offs and stuff like that, but I'm not an accountant, so I can't speak for that. They will also have to pay employees, so people like financial advisors, tax consultants, lawyers, because in order to file your taxes as a large Roblox game, especially if you have a toy line, you obviously would have someone who's an accountant that would help you file your taxes and track your spending, stuff you can write off in your taxes, etc. So they also have to pay professionals to help them manage this, on top of anybody who's working for the game, like a social media manager, developers, and the owners also have to take a cut home, because obviously you're not going to work for free. Now, if we do a total breakdown of where we started and where we ended, the total consumer cost, so what you're paying for the game passes, is $48.60. And after the deductions, which Roblox takes 1,256 Robux, Roblox DevX rates, and taxes, which is $2.26, the total loss is $40.60. And the take home for Dressed Impress is only $8-ish for all the game passes being sold. So we're keeping in mind, not just imagining just one game pass is sold, but that assuming that a player purchases every single game pass, and that doesn't take into account expenses such as lawyers, because obviously they need lawyers, contractors, so developers and people they're hiring, advertising, people who work for the game, and the take home, because obviously if you're running a game, you want to be able to pay yourself. So altogether, although these are not official numbers, and I do need to clarify, I did want to shed some light on just how, reasonable I would say the pricing for Dressed Impress actually is. Because at the end of the day, compared to some other games like Adopt Me that charge astronomical amounts for certain game passes, the cost and the way that they price game passes, especially VIP, where they are constantly adding new things, is actually incredibly low. And of course, I understand that players don't always have the full context of how much it costs to run a game, but when you actually do the math and you look at, on average, which keep in mind, these are all estimations, these are not like exact numbers, obviously I don't have access to that, but judging by the estimations and just kind of general math we can do, the actual amount that Dressed Impress is taking home is a fraction of what you as a consumer pays, and that has to do with how much Roblox takes from developers, how much the DevX program, in my opinion, undervalues developers, and basically, I would say, kind of in no legal terms here, but in my opinion, feels like a scam, in the sense that you are getting paid less than what the Robux is valued at when a consumer buys it, and the whole system is just, in my opinion, really not well constructed, which leads developers losing a ton of money. In this case, they lost $40.60 in value, when if the DevX rates were a bit more fair, or maybe if Roblox took less of a cut, they would earn a substantial amount more money. However, on this whole sale of almost $50, they only take home less than almost a fifth of that, $8. That is crazy. That is insane. And especially when the game is the one that is obviously making players join the game, they're the ones that are incentivizing players to purchase things. You could say, well, Roblox is the platform that they're hosting on, so obviously they have to take a cut. Sure. Fine, whatever, right? But at the same time, the game is doing all the work. They are making sure that they're scripting it. They are making sure that they're doing all the modeling. They also have to pay developers quite a bit of money, especially with the whole mask body and the rework and stuff like that. That costs a lot of money to get done. And obviously, if you're a developer, you could do it yourself maybe, but at the same time, a lot of these games will outsource work because it just takes a ton of time and it's easier to just pay somebody else to do it. And developer work is not cheap and it shouldn't be. But the unfortunate truth is that a game could pay hundreds of dollars to make new sets, and after selling every single Game Pass, they only take home $8. Now, I do need to obviously consider here that Roblox does have other forms of compensation in the form of active players, so players are actively playing your game, you can earn money that way through Robux, but again, that Robux still is subject to the DevX or developer exchange rate, which, as we know, is notoriously low paying, so they're probably not making a massive amount of money. And also important to note is that we're not considering that some players may only purchase one Game Pass or two Game Passes. I think it's very rare for somebody, unless they're a mega fan, to purchase absolutely every single Game Pass in Dressed and Pressed, because I think most players just care for like the utility ones, like 2 times money and stuff like that. The other thing too is that they do have a toy line, which I am gonna be honest, I thought the toys were incredibly overpriced. I saw them at my local store. They were untouched because the price is pretty high, at least where I live. I'm not sure if that's fully because of maybe the import fees, or I have no idea. That has to do with obviously the game with their back end. But what's also important to note is that the cost of the dolls or any merchandise that they produce is also cut substantially because they have to pay manufacturing costs, so like things like testing. There are some countries where if you make toys for kids, you have to pay for additional kid safety testing, which is very expensive. On top of that, you have to do a lot of trial and error. You have to pay artists for the packaging that is going to go into the doll packaging. You also have to pay for the just raw material cost for the packaging. You have to pay to have someone help with distribution, which sometimes maybe the manufacturer may do that, but I think more times than not they'll typically outsource distribution to make it more seamless. And on top of that, you're also paying a cut of your doll sale price to the retailer that it's being sold at. So stuff like Target and Walmart, they take a chunk of the cost as well. So altogether, the game really doesn't make a ton of money from some of these features. So I think when people are criticizing Dressed and Pressed for being way too expensive, or when they think stuff is really unreasonable, you're of course entitled to your opinion, but I think it's important to consider just how much money they actually lose in the grand scheme of things, of all the processes they have to go through just to get paid. And although obviously, if you're selling millions of copies, at the end of the day, maybe you sold 1 million of these, you made $8 million, right? But at the same time, the grand scheme of things, you could have made $48 million, right? But Roblox takes so much of that cut that you actually make a tiny, tiny fraction of that. And I think it's a very unfortunate and unfair thing to do to developers, especially when they are the backbone of your entire platform and consistently make you millions upon millions of dollars every single year. But regardless, I just want to share this with you guys, and let me know down below if you guys want me to do math for other games and tell you how much I can estimate they made per Game Pass and stuff like that. But again, keep in mind, I am not a financial advisor. I don't have a degree in finances and stuff like that. I am just simply using kind of average amounts and doing the math to kind of determine what I believe to be the closest accurate assumption that I can make based on the information that I have. But regardless, let me know your thoughts down below. Were you surprised to find out how little games actually take home? I'm curious, and I will see you guys next time. Bye bye!